Hello and welcome to the Azure Stack HCI Show. Hello Manfred, how are you doing today?
Hello, Sven. I'm fine. Thank you.
What are the topics of today's show, Manfred?
Yeah, the planned topics for today are to talk about the hardware solutions, so different hardware categories we have, and the new updated sizer tool for Azure Stack HCI. But we had some, let's say, unexpected news this week. So we know that we have continuous updates on Azure Stack HCI, but we had an update this week, on Tuesday, I think so, Tuesday or Wednesday, with a 24.02 version for Azure Stack HCI 23H2, and we have several news in there we should talk about, and I think this is one of the topics we will start when we come to the technical part. Yeah.
That's good to know. So let's start with the news, I guess. Makes sense.
Okay, yeah, let's start with the news about the next Azure Stack HCI update. So it's still Azure Stack HCI 23H2. This is the major release version. This is what we have since February, what was announced in February. And I prepared the docs page for us, the learn.microsoft.com for Azure Stack HCI. And when we have a look at this, we can see that there is a new section, features and improvements in 24.02. So important, this is not a new major release. This is a monthly update for Azure Stack HCI. And we know these monthly updates, we have usually hot fixes, security fixes in there. But in this version, we also have some technical changes and updates. The first thing is a new built-in security role. We talked several times already about the Azure Arc Resource Bridge. The Azure Arc Resource Bridge is represented by a virtual machine that runs on premises on our Azure Stack HCI cluster. And this machine is connected to Azure. And whenever we deploy virtual machines or Azure Virtual Desktop or things like this, the information is sent to the local Azure Arc Resource Bridge and is deployed locally. And for sure, this Azure Arc Resource Bridge is also important when we think about security. And last time in the Azure Stack HCI show, no, I think it was Azure Stack HCI show or Tech Talk video, we discussed about security. It was a Tech
We are
Talk
doing
video.
so many things.
So many things. It was a Tech Talk video. A few days ago, we discussed about security in Azure Stack HCI 23H2, and we have seen that there's a major focus on security. And here Microsoft changed the role model in the Azure Arc Resource Bridge to increase the security level even more. In the past, we had, let's say, more global security and user perspective on it. And now we have a new deployment user role. Important is if you deployed your Azure Arc Resource Bridge in the preview phase already of the Azure Stack HCI 23H2, then you have to update this role membership via the portal. It's described in detail here. It's only relevant if you already used Azure Stack HCI 23H2 in the preview version. If you deploy it now, you already have this change in your environment. Then where I was surprised, I didn't expect this, and I've never read about this before. We explained here that we need to prepare our Active Directory, and there's a specific Active Directory preparation script and so on. And this preparation script is still available. And my recommendation is to still use the Active Directory preparation script because it works. But now when we select this link here, we can read that it's also possible to do this manually, to create an organization unit, to block group policy inheritance, to create the user accounts. So if it's not possible to execute this script in your environment because of security restrictions, of role-based restrictions, you now can use your well-known processes for the deployment. Not relevant for the European market, but worldwide, there's a new region. It's Australia that you can use for registering. The important thing is for sure the Azure Stack HCI cluster runs in your data centers, is in your environment, but you have to register this in an Azure resource group, and the resource group has to be in a supported region. And till now we had West Europe, US, and now new Australia also in here. Network documentation. There are some great updates. There's a complete new network documentation guide. It's from 28th of February, and we have a new network design framework that exactly describes the requirements or the network relationship depending on the cluster size. This is the first part. The cluster connectivity in the second section, the network traffic intents, the management connectivity, and the network adapter configuration. And when you walk through this guide, you have a detailed explanation of step 1, cluster size. And interesting is that we can read here with 4 or more nodes, we need dedicated storage switches. This was clear. And if we have 1 or 2 nodes, we can work direct connected in a single node deployment. We do not need a dedicated storage network. In 2 nodes, we can work direct connected. Interesting is that we have an update here that the 3 node cluster with direct connectivity will be supported for Azure Stack HCI. So when we scroll down a little bit, we can see in this network pattern description that actually not supported yet the 3-node deployment with a switchless design. But if Microsoft says not supported yet, this is explicitly on the roadmap. Till now, we had no information about this. We only could say it's not supported today. Now we have it on the roadmap. So it says single node deployment for sure is supported, 2-node deployment, switchless and with switches supported, and 3-node deployment with switches supported. Switchless is on the roadmap, is in work. 4-node will not be supported. This is also a clear statement because till now it was not really clear what's the plan from the Microsoft product group with 4 or more nodes. Will they also support switchless design, or will this be limited to 2-node or 3-node? Now we can see on 3-node they are working, and 4-node and more nodes will require the dedicated switches. So a very, very helpful resource about this. So these are the main new things: region expansion, new network documentation, change to Active Directory preparation, and the new security role for the Azure Arc Resource Bridge.
Yeah, Manfred, thank you for the update. And if you wonder where to get all this information from, so of course, if you watch the Azure Stack HCI show every second week, you can stay up to date, or you follow Manfred or myself on LinkedIn. There we are posting everything that is related to Microsoft infrastructure topics, or the Azure Stack HCI Tech Talk, of course, you know that channel on YouTube and LinkedIn. And there's something new I would like to share with you. And this is Azure Stack HCI website I created this week, the Sven Langenfeld Tech Talk. The intent of this website is to bring everything on one knowledge hub that is about Azure Stack HCI. I got so many questions about where can I find some readiness videos or documentations, presentations, case studies. Where can I find the Sizer, for example? Where can I find the catalog? How can I get access to the Azure Fast Track team? Who are the contact persons for Azure Stack HCI at the hardware vendors? Who's the Microsoft Azure Stack HCI team? How about licensing? And so on and so on. And everything is on this new website, svenlangenfeld-techtalk.com. I will have a screenshot at the end of the session. So if you go on the news, for example, you will find the most relevant ones. on resources or licensing. So this Wednesday, I did a recording about licensing, how to license Azure Stack HCI as pay-as-you-go or using the Azure Hybrid Benefit. How about licensing of Azure Virtual Desktop on-premises and in hosted environments? Everything is included here. You can download the PowerPoint if you want to have it. So everything is integrated. And Manfred showed the Microsoft documentation about Azure Stack HCI, and this is on the home screen. So you can see what's new in Azure Stack HCI, for example. This is exactly linking to the page Manfred shows. So I invite you to bookmark this web page. It will be up to date every single day. When I got something new that's relevant for you, I put it on the website. If there's something old and is no longer in the current state, I delete it from the website. So this is the latest and greatest information I can share with you. Okay, Manfred, back to you. You prepared something for the new sizer.
Yeah, not only the sizer, also about the hardware, because regarding the hardware, we often get asked, is it really required to use certified hardware? What is the difference? Is there hardware for very small deployments and so on? And we want to take this topic because we have a few new things in the hardware ecosystem. And the first thing is that we have systems for nearly every requirement. We have systems based on tower chassis. You can place as a single node or 2 or 3 node cluster somewhere below the desk. We have very small edge solutions you can have in your production areas, in your departments. We have systems for data center modernization and centralized deployment of Azure Stack HCI. And we have systems for different workload requirements. So storage optimized, compute optimized for high memory density, because as you might know, Azure Stack HCI, we have the hyper-converged infrastructure technology in there. So the technique inside these nodes is used to provide storage capacity, and you have for compute, so the virtualization. So we use the resources inside the nodes. And for sure, if we have a very small chassis, we have less slots. If we have a larger chassis, we can have more disk slots. And depending on what we need, high density, high storage density, we can take the system of our choice. If you are new to Azure Stack HCI and you want to test Azure Stack HCI, my recommendation is always to use virtual machines, because when you are using hardware, you have to care about the firmware and the drivers and so on. And you can reduce this complexity if you just use a virtual machine. This is possible. This is known by the deployment wizard. So if you deploy Azure Stack HCI 23H2, the wizard realizes, oh, this is running in a virtual machine. And then also the deployment complexity is reduced because some options are not checked in these virtual machines. If you are familiar in how it works, or if you want to deploy it in a production area, for sure, you need one of the certified systems. And Azure Stack HCI, from the technical perspective, is able to run on a hardware where you meet all the requirements we can read in the documentation. But the huge recommendation is to use one of the validated configurations. So there are validated nodes, there are integrated systems, and there are premier solutions. So we have 3 categories. You could think about building it your own. It might work, but you have to care about so many things. You have to care about the disks, the version of the firmware, the network interface cards. You have to ensure not to put a RAID controller in your systems. You have to care about the memory configuration and so on. This is absolutely not recommended. This is the reason why we have this stack of certified solutions, to have the free choice, because we have a huge ecosystem of validated nodes. So the validated node is the foundation even for the integrated system and the premier solutions. Validated node means that the system is validated and certified based on a standardized testing suite. It's called the private cloud simulator. So if I would be the hardware vendor or the OEM of such a system, I could not design a system and say, oh, no, it's ready for Azure Stack HCI. I have to successfully run the private cloud simulator. It runs about 1 week and it simulates load situations, it simulates failures, it simulates network failures, disk failures, and so on, so that I can be sure that my solution really works with this Azure Stack HCI configuration. So a validated node is a great foundation. We can be sure that the validated node meets all the requirements that are necessary for installing and running Azure Stack HCI. The integrated systems, they provide more services around this validated node, because if you have the hardware and the software, you might have many questions. What is if I have to install firmware updates? What is if I have new driver versions? Who decides if I should install the new driver version or not? What is if I need extended support, and so on? So integrated system has a larger feature set. We will have a look in detail about this that ensures that I will receive support from my hardware vendor for the whole life cycle of the system. Now, a validated node vendor could also say, I will support you in implementation, I will install you the OS, and so on. But for validated nodes, this is optional. For integrated systems, this is mandatory. So it might be an additional service, you have to pay for it, but your hardware vendor has to offer this additional capabilities, these additional advantages. Premier solutions from the customer perspective are more or less, let's say, solution where it's not relevant if I contact Microsoft or the OEM for the support, because it behaves like a complete solution that is provided by Microsoft. And I think this is an important point. In the past, I remember many situations where the question came up, is there a solution, a hardware also from Microsoft, if I want to have only one partner for the whole solution? And about 2 years ago, in the last Microsoft Ignite, I think it was the situation, Microsoft showed some hardware. This was never available in the market, this hardware, but it was the, let's say, announced option where we could have this single stop vendor for hardware and software for Azure Stack HCI. And Premier Solutions, from my understanding, provide more or less exactly what these customers were expecting, that they said we need an integrated solution from hardware and software, where we can go to Microsoft and tell Microsoft, okay, we have an issue, we need some support. Microsoft will never say, okay, we need to address the hardware vendor. And this is the important thing, because when we look in detail and the feature set of this Premier solutions, we can see they have the same validation foundation. So the hardware, we often hear hardware is comparable. I would say usually yes, you can say this like this. You have AMD or Intel CPU, you have comparable memory. Often you have different optimization regarding the airflow in the chassis, regarding the management. So there are differences, but the CPUs, the SSDs, the NVMEs, this is comparable. We always have the committed support for these solutions. Now we have an important point, the solution testing. The validated nodes are tested once. So if I want to provide a solution, a validated node. I test this once, and then I can sell this to my customers. The integrated systems are tested 2 or 4 times a year to ensure that driver updates and firmware updates are covered. But now the Premier nodes, they are tested continuously. And this is very important because driver and firmware changes do not occur at a fixed date 2 or 4 times a year. A firmware update will be required maybe if you realize there's a security issue or there's a technical issue. Then maybe you need an immediate firmware update. And here we have the continuous testing. And the great thing about this continuous testing is that this is not only done by the OEM, but this is also done by Microsoft in their own labs. And I think this is also important for many customers to not only trust a hardware vendor, but also have the guarantee that Microsoft did the same tests in their own labs to guarantee that this is real, this Premier. I would add integrated solution, but I think Microsoft does not use the integrated solution because it's already used the wording in the integrated systems.
So it's very similar to your own data center where you test all the hardware you get access to.
Yeah, for me, it's my, let's say, daily doing in business where I'm testing a lot. But for sure, the customer wants to have a stable and running system where he doesn't need to test it on his own, but to have the guarantee that the next update will work in each constellation. And if both sides test it, Microsoft with the focus on the software and the hardware vendor with the focus on the hardware, this is a great thing and opportunity. Yeah. The deployment, we discussed this in one of our previous Azure Stack HCI shows. In validated nodes, we have seen this deployment wizard in Azure. For the integrated systems, we can reduce the number of clicks because the OS is pre-installed on the integrated systems. And for the Premier solutions, there are templates available. So with the Premier solutions, I could provide the information for the installation to my hardware vendor, and so I could receive a template. I just upload to the Azure portal and deploy based on the template. Yeah, I mentioned this pre-installation of the Azure Stack HCI software. So the multi-node configuration is also available in the validated nodes, but there could be a validated node vendor that says, I only support single nodes. It's the decision of the hardware vendor. In the integrated systems, in the Premier solutions, this is a guaranteed option.
Yeah, that's important to repeat that everything that is in Premier or integrated solution or validated node could be in the lower segment as well.
Yeah.
But it's guaranteed. So from Microsoft perspective, if a hardware vendor says this is a Premier solution, all the items has to be fulfilled. They could be fulfilled for a valid node, a validated node as well, but it's up to the OEM. You have to go to your OEM and say, I'm interested in this and that. Are you offering this? Maybe as an individual service, everything is fine. So it does not mean that it's not available. It only means it's not mandatory for the OEM to have this as part of the offer.
Yeah, this is important to add because every OEM I know, they offer the pre-installation of the HCI software. But it's an offer, it's optional, it's an additional service. In the integrated system, I don't have to ask. I know that the OS has to be pre-installed. So it's already pre-checked there. Yeah. Also, the security settings is an interesting example where we can discuss the same thing. In integrated systems and Premier solutions, they are a must. In the validated node, it's optional. So it's my decision, it's the decision of the hardware vendor if they are enabled by default or not. Yeah, we have the one-stop support for HCI software. Also, a validated node or integrated system vendor can have a support agreement with Microsoft. where this is integrated as a single stop support. But in Premier solutions, it's guaranteed. We have the call home support for service options that the system calls the support if a disk fails, if a fan fails, something has to be replaced. Also for enterprise companies that are operating worldwide, is this solution available in more than 100 countries. This is also a must-have in Premier solutions. So I can be sure if I have departments in different countries worldwide, the Premier solution vendor has to offer his services there. White glove deployment services, we know white glove in many other Microsoft products. This means I don't have to get in touch with the system itself, so it can be deployed without getting hands on the system, because everything is managed by the Premier solution provider. And what is also must-have option, it's not required to be the only option, that we have an as a service purchasing offer, that so we can have a pay-per-use model for the hardware. But this is also available for several integrated systems in the market. But again, this is optional in the Premier solutions. This must be offered. Yeah. Okay, so this about the comparison hardware deployment options. When we have a look at the catalog, then important is to know that the catalog is available via the Azure portal. So if you go to the Azure portal and if you search for Azure Stack HCI, you can have the Explore Catalog option, or you can select the Explore Catalog option here. And in the Explore Catalog option, we have the Azure Stack HCI catalog, and we have the Azure Stack HCI Sizer here. So when we first have a look at the Azure Stack HCI catalog, we can see we have the Premier solutions, the integrated systems, and the validated nodes, the categories I mentioned here. And depending on what you prefer, you can select only Premier solutions, additionally the integrated systems, or additionally the validated nodes. And in the solution builders, you will see you have a huge list of solution builders, only a few, or actually only one, that is offering Premier solutions. Some of them that are offering integrated systems, and many with validated nodes.
From my perspective, it's important to add that it's the decision of the hardware vendor which type of certification they are offering.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, I got a lot of feedback from partners and customers that one of the vendors you've shown already with Premier Solutions seem to focus on this solution type. And they announced that the existing integrated systems will be end of sales in autumn this year. So Manfred, you are more the expert about the complete hardware stuff. So maybe I'm doing something wrong, but my understanding is that the existing integrated systems are going end of sale, and the new technology will be part of the Premier solution. But as you already mentioned, the higher the category is, the more services are coming with them, but these services has to be paid in most of the scenarios by the customer. So if the customer does not want to have this additional services, so for example, they are fine with integrated nodes, they do not need any additional software management opportunities that are integrated in the Premier solution. It's not Microsoft's decision to do that. It's up to the OEM. So if you have any issues with the current or coming availability of the hardware portfolio, please reach out to the OEM, discuss this directly with the OEM. It's not Microsoft's decision, so maybe we can give feedback to the hardware vendors. This is what I'm doing. But if you give this feedback directly to the hardware vendors, makes much more sense.
Absolutely. So Microsoft has defined this feature requirement list. And if I'm a hardware vendor, I could say I have validated nodes and integrated systems. Validated nodes may be an option where I have much flexibility in hardware choices, and I have customers that are caring about the support themselves. I have integrated systems where maybe I have a limited hardware feature set, but I have additional service. And maybe I have a few premier solutions where I offer all the services, but maybe I have only one or two systems. And I think this is what we can see in the hardware catalog, exactly this situation. When I select validated nodes, I will see there are 212 different platforms available in the market. If I unselect the validated nodes and only integrated systems, I will see there are 42 platforms. So it's a reduced set because the OEM, the hardware vendor, has to provide additional services, and all of them decided that they cannot provide these additional services for 212 platforms, but for a selection of 42 platforms. And when we select the Premier solutions, actually only will receive 2 platforms. More are announced. So in the official announcement, there were additional hardware vendors named that also will offer this Premier solutions, but actually they are not in the catalog. And I'm pretty sure that there will be hardware vendors that offer all 3 options. There will be hardware vendors that focus on the integrated systems and validated nodes, and maybe some of them will not offer the Premier solutions. And there might be also some hardware vendors that say, no, we only go the Premier solution way because we only want to offer the full service stack to ensure that our systems are managed and supported by us directly. So as Sven mentioned, it's a choice of the OEM. So Microsoft does not force any hardware vendor to sort in one of these categories. But if I want to be part of one of these categories, I have to ensure to fulfill the requirements. And for sure, if I have a Premier solution, I could also offer the integrated system and the validated node, but maybe it's not part of my business plan, because with a validated node, I cannot sell any additional services. I usually sell the hardware. The rest is optional. And in the Premier solution, many services are mandatory. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so this is the catalog, very helpful if you want to have an overview, you want to see what's available in systems. So you have some very special systems, small servers, edge servers, tower servers, as I already mentioned, high capacity systems. You can select for the GPU support if you want to have a system that, for example, supports GPU partitioning, which is exclusive to Azure Stack HCI 23 H2 and also 22 H2, so the actual and the previous version of Azure Stack HCI. But today we don't have GPU partitioning in Windows Server, for example. This is announced for the next version, but today it's not available. Here we can filter for systems that support GPU partitioning. Yeah, and even here for these systems, you can see there are tower servers, small rack servers, larger rack servers that can be used for the GPU partitioning. If you want to go deeper into the planning, we have the Azure Stack HCI Sizer, and the Sizer was redesigned. In the past, we needed a version that was limited or connected to a Microsoft account. We can see here that I'm logged into a Microsoft account, but this is not any longer this consumer account we had in the past. And the first thing is that we select for the validated node integrated system or Premier solution here in the Sizer. So it depends what your requirement is. The second step is to choose the CPU family. This is a small disadvantage, I would say, because maybe I do not know if I want to Intel or AMD based CPU, but this has to be pre-selected. We have a question. If I have a microcluster in the hardware catalog, what exactly does it mean with support end date? Yeah, let's check this before we continue with the sizer here. When we go back to the catalog, there was a configuration, explore the Azure Stack HCI catalog, and we have seen in the overview that we have a solution committed to 5 years of hardware support for validated nodes, integrated systems, and premier solutions if we buy a system today. So for the systems that we have today in the catalog and we buy them, we can be sure that we have 5 years of support minimum for each of these solutions. Now the question was for a micro cluster, and there are 2 vendors, as far as I know, that sell this microcluster solution. But for sure, if you have another one in mind, please use the chat to bring this up. So when we look for these 2 vendors, there should be a microcluster configuration. Let's have a look for it. Here we have the first one. No, it's on the last page. It's already removed from the catalog. No, here we can see. This is a microcluster, Azure Stack HCI microcluster, and we can see support ended 1st January 2024. This means for this system, this was sold years ago, we don't have hardware support any longer. For sure, we can talk to this hardware vendor to ask him, is there an extension for the support? But first thing is, we cannot buy new systems with this configuration. And if we have an existing system, the default support that was initially sold with the system has ended. So if Azure Stack HCI 23H2 is running on these nodes, you have to discuss with the hardware vendor. If they can offer you extended support, you have to discuss with the hardware vendor. The systems that are still in support, so those systems, here you can ensure if you buy them today, you will have a hardware platform support for 5 years, so that you will be able to install the Azure Stack HCI updates, you will be able to use the Azure Stack HCI features, and so on. So this is the commitment for the new systems. If you bought such a system, let's say 3 years ago, in those times, we didn't have this commitment for 5 years. So this 5-year commitment is new. So this is the reason why I try to explain this. But here for these systems, exactly, we have the situation that the support end has reached. So with 22H2, we still can use them usually, but you have to talk to the hardware vendor what he can offer there.
I wonder why they are still in the catalog if the support ended.
They are in the catalog with the information that the support ended. You're right. I cannot buy new systems of them. Maybe it's for documentation to ensure, to show that this was a certified solution. I don't have an official explanation why they keep these retired systems in the catalog. Maybe really for documentation and for ensuring that if I have such a system, I can check if this was a validated or integrated system previously. Yeah.
No. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so back to the sizer, we have the selection of the system type, we have the CPU type, we have the hardware vendor, and this is again, let's say, a limitation, because maybe at this point I'm not sure which vendor to choose. Maybe I also only want to have a recommendation for the size and not for the vendor. This is not possible, so we have to decide for a hardware vendor, and as you can see here, several of them are grayed out. These are the vendors that only have validated nodes. Yeah, When I switch to validated nodes, I can see I have much more choices. With the integrated systems, the choices are somehow limited. And with the Premier solutions, I only have this single vendor actually that is offering the Premier solutions. Then for the configuration, we have a special choice where I can specify that I want to have a 2-node solution only. You can imagine if I let the sizer choose the size of my environment, the recommendation could be to plan with 3 or 4 nodes or something like this. Here with the solution with 2 nodes, I can ensure that as long as possible, the sizer will try to put it into 2 nodes. Then we have the availability. N+1 means that 1 node can fail. N+2 means that 2 nodes can fail. It's not possible to build a 2-node solution with N+2 redundancy. So this is not realized by the sizer, but I think this is clear. Then tolerance for storage failures typically is 2, so that one disk can fail and another disk can fail without any data loss. So this is the recommendation to choose 2 here. Storage type can be all NVMe. This is the typical thing we actually do, that we choose all NVMe. And here we can decide if we are capacity optimized or if we are optimized on performance. And in the extended configuration, we can decide if we want to choose the in-memory cache. The in-memory cache is discussed very often because we not always have performance advantages if we use the in-memory cache here. And so, but 1 gigabyte is typical. Azure Stack HCI 23H2 turns this to 0 in the deployment. So the deployment creates here 0 cache, but the typical configuration is 1 gigabyte. So not 10 or 20 gigabytes. You usually have something between 0 and 4 gigabytes here. Additional growth for the future, it's a value in percentage, and you can decide if you also want to be able to extend the capacity of the memory and extend the capacity of the storage, so the disk drives. This means the sizer tries to leave empty slots to enable you to put just drives and memory modules in there. Okay, so I did not choose the vendor. Do you have any preference or any wish here, Sven, or from the audience? Because we have to choose one of them here.
Then choose data on.
Then let's choose data on. Okay, the first one, so it's based on the alphabet. First one, data on. Okay, we have seen integrated solution, and this is the reason why these vendors were available. Okay, in the next step, we create our workload. The workload is a list of virtual machines. And the interesting thing is here that we don't need an technical analysis of the existing environment. We can just write a list. So it's very easy from the technical perspective. So I could say here I have my VMs, and these VMs, they have traditional workload. Maybe I have 20 of these VMs. They have 4 virtual CPUs, and they have a virtual to physical of 1 to 6, and they have 4 gigabytes of memory. I want to add them. And maybe I want to have more workload. Maybe I have some virtual SQL servers. I have a workload type SQL. Maybe we have 2 of them. For sure, they have, let's leave this 8 CPUs. They have a 1-to-1 relationship and 128 gigabytes of memory. And maybe we have some virtual desktop infrastructure here, VDI VM. And the VDI VM is workload type VDI. Maybe we have 10 of these machines because we want to run Azure Virtual Desktop. We want to use multi-session. This means that we have a 1-to-1 CPU relationship. We have 8 virtual CPUs, and we have a 1-to-1 CPU relationship. And in these virtual machines, maybe we have 32 gigabytes of memory, something like this. So such a configuration would be suitable for up to 5 typical office users in each machine. And so we can configure our workload. And then in the next step, we will see a result. Unfortunately, here we don't have a matching result. Maybe I had some issues with the VDI configuration. Let's reduce this a little bit here. And yeah, then we have a configuration. I had the limitation with the 2 nodes. And if I have a too huge workload that does not fit into 2 nodes, then the sizer does not say, okay, you require 2 nodes, but we need 3 or 4. Then I get the feedback, we don't have a solution for it. So this is the risk to limit it in the first step on 2 nodes. But now I reduced the workload a little bit, and we can see there's a solution for 2 nodes. In this solution, based on my workload, we have 80 cores. We have 1 terabyte of memory and 1 terabyte of compute memory, 28 terabyte for storage in each node. And here at the bottom, we have the, usage. So we have the 66 cores are used by the workload. 13 cores are for growth. 1 core is left over because we don't have CPUs with 23 or 27 cores. We have always steps of 2, and 80 cores for high availability. This is important to plan because if we have a 2-node solution and 1 node should fail, the other node must be able to take the workload. And for CPUs, we can over provision. For memory is not possible. So we have the workload memory, we have the growth, and we need here 1 terabyte for failover. So if 1 node fails, the other node has to take the full workload. And we have the storage. It's the disk-based storage. NVMe was my preferred choice. We have the storage that is used. We have the resiliency. This is the amount of storage that is used for building the data redundancy. And we have the future growth, the 6 terabytes here, left over 13 terabytes, and reserve our 15 terabytes to be able to run a local rebuild. What has changed here in the old Sizer, we always had this section here with the IOPS. They were never shown here. The plan was to show them. Microsoft removed this area here because no system provided the IOPS. So it depends on the additional information you receive from your solution vendor, because if you choose here the option solution vendor website, you can jump to the website of the solution vendor and see here additional information like IOPS, like configuration recommendations, and so on. Microsoft decided to give this in the hands of the specific OEM. When we take such,
MVP, Manfred, do you know where to give feedback to the Sizer? Because it's a preview version, so I would think that it's possible to give feedback. So one feedback, for example, would be to choose the language. So at the moment, it's very inconsistent. You can see that most of the things are in German, maybe defined by your system, not choosable through the website.
This is exactly the problem. I switched before the session my language, but it was only for the session. And as you have seen, I reloaded the Sizer. And usually I can specify the language here on the top, where I just switch from the EDE to ENUS, and it's not possible here. And sorry for this. I did not do this in the new session because these were several steps, and it always goes back. And as you mentioned, it's not consistent. So the description is English, and I think English is absolutely fine for me, but it should be choosable.
Yeah, and another point is that at the beginning there was no recommendation for the hardware because you have chosen too many virtual machines for VDI. So there's no result, and I think the Sizer should give feedback why there's no result. So something like you choose a 2-node solution and your VDI is too big for 2 nodes. So you as an expert exactly know where the limitation were, but maybe I would have no idea. And then I would think, okay, it's a problem maybe from data on because they are not offering anything, but the problem from my selection of the two node. So maybe we can give this feedback. Do you know where to give this feedback to?
I would send it to the product group. This is where I also tried to address the option that maybe the CPU choice should not be here. It should be an optional thing, but there should be a third option. I'm open to the CPU because as we know, we had some limitations of vendor A or B or C in the past. And so maybe I don't have a pre-choice. Maybe it's fine for me to use one of them. And so there should be a third option. I'm open for it. Please give me a recommendation at the end. And then there could also be two options to say, okay, there's an Intel-based solution, an AMD-based solution. And I also gave feedback that I would add the network choice, because we had one Azure Stack HCI show. This was in those times where we were sending in German language. We discussed the networking option, and we explained that we have RDMA, remote direct memory access, based on IVORP or RDMA over converged Ethernet, so RoCE. And from the technical perspective, both are great. But when we look at the customer situations, sometimes we have to choose option one or to choose option B. And when we take one of these solutions in the catalog, let's take any of these solutions, for example, this one here. And when we go to the catalog and have a look at the network connectivity, here, for example, we can see we only have the NVIDIA Connect X6. Let's take another solution. For example, let's take this one here. There maybe we have two options. Yeah, here we have Intel and NVIDIA. And depending on our needs, maybe we prefer the Intel NIC or the NVIDIA NIC. And from my point of view, this is more important maybe than selecting the vendor or the CPU in the first step, or make it optional. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, and so this is the new version of the sizer. It's optimized, but there are still many things to fix, as we discussed. It's still a preview, as we can see here, but it gives more qualified recommendations regarding the system sizes at the end. And it removed this filled values like IOPS and so on, where we always could see there's no information about this. So this was removed so that all the fields that are there are now required by the hardware vendor to be provided for the sizer here.
Perfect.
Okay.
So it looks like we are at the end of today's session.
Regarding the hardware choices, regarding the sizing, absolutely. Maybe one important thing to add, I have many asks actually regarding GPUs. And when we take a system in the catalog, we always have this tab GPU support. And in the GPU support, we can see the support from this specific chosen hardware vendor for this solution here. For example, we can see we have an A2, A16, A40, A100 support. But from NVIDIA, there's already a L series. I don't know what exactly the situation, why the previous models were A series and the latest version is L series, but the latest technology is the L series of NVIDIA. And from Microsoft and NVIDIA, the L series is already supported for Azure Stack HCI. But as we discussed this before, if a hardware vendor offers this solution in his systems, it's the choice of the hardware vendor, because the hardware vendor has to revalidate the nodes, has to re-upload the validation result to their catalog. And so if you want to use a L series, it's possible, it's supported from Microsoft and NVIDIA. And now you have to look for a specific hardware vendor that already offers the L series in his systems.
Okay, thank you. There are no questions, so I would say we switch to closing for today. And the next Azure Stack HCI show will be in 4 weeks. So not in 2 weeks, because you are at the MVP Summit, correct?
Yes, I'm traveling to Redmond and looking forward to be part of the MVP Summit. We had the first MVP Summit after Corona last year, also in March, and it was really great. And now this year again, and I'm really looking forward for this week, where we usually get a huge update about what we can expect in the next month for our focus topics. So in my situation, for Azure Stack HCI and for Windows Server.
Yeah, and maybe you get some news we can share end of March. There is the Windows Server Summit in
April?
March. Well, or is it April?
So there's the virtual
Microsoft
Windows
one,
Server
not
Summit, the
yours.
Microsoft Windows Server Summit. There's a virtual event. Yeah, this is in March. I have seen the announcement. It should be exactly. So I have a session there, and I think this is at 28th of March. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe there will be some announcements as well, because I have the feeling it's not only about Windows Server. It looks like some Azure Stack HCI topics are included as well. So we are awaiting a lot of updates, for example, about the future of stretch cluster in Azure Stack HCI, and how to upgrade from the current version to the next one in place, and so on. So maybe during the Windows Server Summit, a lot of cool announcements will be made. So stay curious. Let's have a second look at my new website. Here is the URL for you. So everything I know about Azure Stack HCI regarding cool videos, documents, resources, support, licensing is on that website. Everything I got information about will be posted on that website immediately. So if you are interested in the current version of my Azure Stack HCI knowledge, then this hub is exactly what you should have a look at. And then it makes sense to follow us on Azure Stack HCI Tech Talk. This is a platform on YouTube and on LinkedIn. And here we have the opportunity to stay in contact with you on a daily basis. And of course, we recommend you to follow Manfred and me in person on LinkedIn, as well, as we are posting not only about Azure Stack HCI, but a lot of other Microsoft-related topics. Then we have the hybrid show. This is for our German-speaking friends, every second week, same day as the Azure Stack HCI show. It's in the morning, 10 a.m. So when you have seen this note, you already missed the one of that day. So in 2 weeks, there will be no hybrid show because of the MVP Summit. But in 4 weeks, Manfred and MVP Eric Berg will be back with the hybrid show. And finally, a recommendation for everyone who wants to be up to date with all the things Manfred and I are doing. It's the Windows Business Solution Club calendar. You can add this calendar to your Outlook calendar, for example. And if you want to know how to do that, go on manfredhelber.de/calendar. Then you have the opportunity to add everything we are doing into your calendar. And if you want to have a newsletter, you can go to manfredhelber.de/newsletter, and then you got an email. But this is in German language, so only for our German friends. Okay, so we are at the end of today's session. I would like to say thank you to everyone attended this session. And as always, final words are Manfred's, and they say goodbye and thank you and see you in 4 weeks.
Yeah, goodbye. Have a nice weekend and see you in 4 weeks also for the next Azure Stack HCI show.